Well, hello, everybody. This is Aleks Paunic, or as they would say in the United States, Aleks Paunic. And, today we are talking to Serbian startups, Serbian technology companies, IT companies, how to prepare and expand into the U.S. market. I do want to thank Tesla Nation for the invite. I'm here in Belgrade, Serbia, in Started offices. And there's a topic that's been on everybody's mind. Every time I come and visit in Serbia, people are asking me a lot of questions about the United States. I've been living in the United States for 30 years. I'm going to tell a little bit more about myself. But it's always about the pros and cons and everything in between, how to do business in America. And a lot of IT companies, tech companies in Serbia, they're looking to expand in U.S. And today we want to give you some of those pointers and the best practices how to venture inside the United States. So agenda for today is, when I talked to Tesla Nation and Started, we wanted to kind of put you in a real life environment where you are putting yourself in the best position for the pre-project negotiation, right? You do have a client in mind, you have a pipeline, you're trying to put yourself in the best position to win business. And we are going to give you some pointers how to do that. Then once you're in business, you want to establish some of the best practices for the working environment, right? You want to make sure that you give yourself and your team a best chance to please your client, your customer, and get that recurring business and recurring revenue. And then lastly, once the business is established, you are going to be invited to some of the business functions and events. And people ask me often, how do I behave? How do Americans behave? What should they expect? And how do we put ourselves in the best position to present ourselves, have fun, but also, adhere to American business decorum? So having said that, let me start by introducing myself a little bit. What is my name in Serbia? I'm Aleks Paunic, but in the United States, I'm Aleks Paunic. And I was born in Novi Sad 44 years ago, although I want to think I'm a little bit younger. But I lived in the United States since '91. It's been 30 years. And I got lucky. I played tennis, so I got scholarships in both high school and in college. And I leaped into the IT world, tech world 15 years ago. I was actually in the financial industry right out of college, but then I made the transition into IT, where I got really lucky. I worked for a company in Denver, Colorado, which was my home for almost 20 years. I worked for a company called MX Logic. This is mid-2000s where, software as a service became a really big thing, turnkey solutions. And product was very simple. That's a great lesson. Make a simple product, make it easy for use. That's what MX Logic had. We had the great email spam filtering product. And the company was growing rapidly. It was a startup that caught the eye of McAfee. Everybody knows McAfee. If you look at your laptop or your computer machine, it's that pesky antivirus, that you cannot get rid of. But McAfee bought MX Logic. So I joined McAfee, which is, Fortune, at that time was Fortune 500 company, global company. But then just a year after that, in 2010, Intel bought McAfee. And Intel is obviously a massive company. Everybody knows Intel at that time was a Fortune 10 company. So things happened really quickly for me. Within a couple of years, I was working for a small startup in Denver, doing some demonstrations of the product. But then just a couple of years later, I was part of one of the biggest, legendary companies like Intel. And my job was always around sales. And we are going to talk about that here in a minute. But, when you look at American companies, especially more sophisticated IT and tech companies, when it comes to sales, they have two tracks and two departments. We're talking obviously about B2B model. One is direct selling to, other companies that need your product or your service. And the other side is what we call channel. right? And this is where you find partners and distributors and resellers. They're already inside some of these accounts that you're trying to penetrate. And you want to build a relationship beyond just giving a referral points or money, but you're building strategies and logistics and marketing plans for these partners to represent you with end users. So my job was, most of the time, since I got into IT on the channel side. So if you ask me, well, what's your expertise, Alex? Distribution, channel, reselling of the product, that's, where my expertise lies. And, just talking to a lot of Serbian companies, I noticed that channel is not represented yet. But when you're trying to penetrate a massive market like US, you better find some strategic partners. And in 2017, with a colleague of mine from McAfee, David O'Barry, shout out to David, we started PreCog Security. We felt that cybersecurity space is moving into direction of risk management, risk mitigation. So we surrounded ourselves with very talented people, what we call reverse engineers, penetration testers. And we are, also building our products. So we are, call us cybersecurity startups for startups. And what's becoming apparent, like I said, a lot of startups are coming to us for our services, because right now, if you're a startup, if you're building a product, it's really hard to sell it to large organizations if you don't have security compliance in check. So most of our clients are coming from the startup world. Also, some of you guys probably heard about Serbian Entrepreneur Group. It's a very active group, out of San Francisco. We have chapters in Toronto, New York, Belgrade, Novi Sad. I'm actually managing the Florida chapter, Miami chapter. We're actually helping a lot of Serbian startups, especially before COVID, come into US, present, and shout to Zoya Kukic and Vukašin. We were working what's called the North American Roadshow. Right before COVID, we actually singled out, identified some of the startups that were going to come to US, and within a span of 10 days or 2 weeks, they're going to represent their company and product, have meetings in Miami, New York, Toronto. Unfortunately, COVID hit, but we're still doing meetings online. I'm hoping that that's going to resume in 2022. And lately, I've been actually helping companies, Serbian companies, expand beyond those initial presentations. I see that there is a massive need for what we call the fractional business development, like boots on the ground, business developers that are actually located in US. I'm also a strategic partner. Shout to Vaneko and Branislav Valuh, who is helping Serbian companies. They're looking for outsourcing projects, match them with the US companies that are looking for those. So a lot of I'm very busy, as you can see, a lot of projects, but I would say 70–80% of my bandwidth is with cybersecurity. Now, let's get into some of these topics. You guys are, carving up some time here. I do appreciate you finding, what's going to be 60 minutes today. And we want to talk about, how do Americans behave? How do you put yourself in the best position, to win these projects? And some of these things that we're going to talk about, in the pre-project negotiations, you guys are going to be like, nah, of course I knew that. I'm sure a lot of you guys are very successful. You have successful companies. You have great revenue, but there's always room for improvement. And I was really lucky when I was working for McAfee and Intel. I had an incredible boss. His name is Tom Hyatt. And he really took it to the next level when it comes to being prepared for the meetings. So you guys coming to the meetings with American clients and partners, what I would say is you have to, be really prepared and really understand those companies, what they do. And a lot of times when I talk to Serbian companies, I see amazing services and amazing product, but when I start challenging them or asking them, who is a buyer persona, who's really signing a check, who's going to buy a product or service, sometimes they're lacking and they're not understanding that. So not only do you have to understand who is the buyer, but you also have to know where the buyer reports who is their executive and who actually they have under their team. So you're trying to build a value proposition to these champions of your product, but you always got to understand who is actually buying your product and what do they need, who do they report to, and make sure you map out what we call organizational chart, right? So even if they're buying your product, but if I ask you like, hey, that person that you communicate on a regular basis, do you know who they report to? Do you know who reports underneath them? You have to know those things. So that's an organizational chart. So be always prepared those first initial meetings to take a lot of notes. We call it like copious amounts of notes. Now, here's a big one, right? If you want to write down, call to action, few things that you can take from today's presentation and fireside chat that we're going to have here shortly, your job as an owner, as a representative of your company, when you're working with Americans, right? You want to put yourself in a position to win a job, to have a recurring revenue. And in order to do that, you have to remove friction, right? And, we identified probably like talking to Lukashin, over the period of the last few years, we identified probably 3 ways where, we can create friction, or even worse, there's a friction, you don't even know it, and you're not working on removing it. So the first one is going to be a language barrier, right? That's the most obvious one. But sometimes it's not obvious. And the reason is, well, first of all, the language barrier exists between Serbian and English. It just is. Serbian and English, they're not friends. They're very different, opposite languages, right? They don't have the same root. They don't have the same grammar. We don't have the same rhythm when we talk in Serbian versus English, right? Right now, when I'm talking to you, most of my brain or half of my brain is just thinking in an American kind of way. But a lot of times when I notice when the Serbians are speaking English, it's really not speaking English, but it's mostly translating Serbian sentences, with English words. And a lot of time that's going to come out clumsy and not understood by Americans. Americans have one thing that nobody's going to tell you, and I'm going to break it down to you right now, is they're never going to tell you your English is not good enough. They're never going to tell you, I did not understand what you said. I actually had situations, when I was working for a big company, we had support outside the United States. And, our support spoke, English was their second language, and they spoke English with heavy accent. And I'll be sitting in a meeting, and I'm thinking, well, there's no way that anybody understands what our support is saying. But nobody's saying anything. People are just presenting and, meeting is done. And I come up to my American colleagues and I say, look, English is not my first language. And, I can actually ask this, I can maybe be a little bit politically incorrect. But have you guys understood what support was saying to you for the last hour? Do you understand the action items that you have? And they said, nope. And I'm like, why did you not interrupt? Why did you not tell them we did not understand? And they said like, well, we felt it's going to be rude. We did not want to offend them. And I said, you literally did not understand anything what happened in the last 6 minutes. No. So that's one thing when you present and you feel like, you know what, I think I did great. A lot of times what's going to happen is, your American partner or client is not going to interrupt. They're not going to tell you. But my advice to you is go back to them and make sure that they understood everything, right? Just go with that notion that, we probably have a little bit thicker accent, and it's harder for them to understand it. What you can do as a business owner, as a founder, I was talking to some of the people here at Tesla Nation that started. I think it would be a great idea to tell your team 1 day a week to just speak English, right? So when somebody comes to you with a project, right, getting ready, you as a founder or you as a team lead or project lead, challenge your teammate, challenge your employee, challenge your other co-founders and tell them, hey, can you represent that in English? Say it in Serbian. To je odlično. Da li možete na engleskom da mi to pokažete? And if they challenge you back, challenge them back to do it, right? I'm of a strong belief that that's going to help you increase your revenue, put you in the best position to win business with your clients. So we have to understand that Serbian and English are very opposite, and a lot of times, unfortunately, I see some tremendous ideas in Serbia, some tremendous products, tremendous talented engineering that's not accompanied with the proper English. And that means you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're not putting yourself in the best position to grow your revenue, to grow your company. So, maybe a good start is 1 day a week to challenge your team just to speak in English and to do all communication via email or text through English. It's a good start. Cultural uncertainty. What I mean by that is a lot of times we think that Americans just by default, they understand where Serbia is. And that's not the case. Americans are very open, and they're going to tell you that they're geographically and something historically challenged. So, yeah, we heard those stories that, Serbia, Syria, Siberia, a lot of times for average American, those are the same terms. So it's our job to explain them, never leave it to a chance to just assume that your new a client, that your new partner just understands where Serbia is. Explain it to him. It's the western part of Eastern Europe. Give him a quick geographical lesson. And I think that's very important for them to understand. And then explain it to them that culturally, we have much more similarities than differences. We all love to work hard. We like our families. We like to have a little fun. We like holidays. It's very important that you explain that and don't leave it to your, your client or potential client's interpretation. Make sure that you show them those similarities on the cultural side. And then there's those business standards ambiguity, right? Again, you're meeting the client for the first time, you're negotiating, show them that you understand the same business standards, that you handle the same business standards just like they do. Everything from, hey, profit and loss statement. If you're talking to an investor, what's a term sheet, right? You understand that terminology. Show them that you're aligned and that, again, we have much more similarities than ambiguities. But sometimes if you don't do that, and you leave it to your client after the meeting to interpret it, you don't know what's going on after the meeting. They might say, you know what, I'm not sure these guys are going to understand if we build a business plan and put it in front of them, are they going to understand these things? Maybe we should go with a company from UK or Israel or Scandinavia that we have much more in common. So definitely remove friction on those three fronts. Now, closing business, right? Again, what is selling? You want to identify key persona, you want to identify their pain, problem, and you want to solve it, right? And in order to do that, I always tell people, what is selling? Well, selling is listening. You got to actively listen. You really got to understand your client's problem. And the easiest way to sell is to listen. And they're going to tell you, hey, I'm a VP of operations. We're looking for someone to do this project under this time, for this amount of money. Here's a timeline, deadline. So when you present your proposal, make sure you mention those points. When you present and mention those points and show your client that you're listening. And then when it's between you and some Ukrainian company, they're going to be like, well, the Serbian team really listened to us. They made a point, on the budget, the timeline. They understand that, I'm a key persona. Let's do business with them, right? So once you get a project, you're working on a project, right? We all want to make sure that our clients are happy, and we want to make sure that our clients are coming back, right? Recurring revenue is the key, whether you're a startup or you're outsourcing company. And best practices during the project, I always tell people over-communicate. I do notice a gap between Serbian communication and U.S. communication. When something's in Serbia, I would ask people, and I, have partners, we do have some engineering power here. I'm like, why did you not communicate that? And then the Serbian way would answer, well, it was assumed. You know, American way is like over communicate. It's only going to put you in the best position. It's better to over communicate than under communicate, right? Another thing is tardiness, right? I do notice that sometimes, and I'm guilty of the same thing. Let me just tell you, you know, you gotta be on time. And actually, in US, we say if you're on time, you're late, but you want to be 5 or 10 minutes early. Americans really appreciate that, and they say time is money, but they really mean it. So please treat everybody with respect when you're meeting. Try to be, you know, obviously we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings now, but try to be there early, and you're going to put yourself in the best position to impress that client and to keep that job and project going. And business communication email, you know, I put it there as a very important fact. Most Americans, you know, whether it's large organizations, you know, I'm seeing, you know, some of the startups are using obviously more internally. They're using Slacks and stuff like that. But business email is still the predominant way that people are communicating. I'm noticing that sometimes, you know, like I said, I partner with Serbian companies. The emails are not concise. There's a long paragraph, you know. So when you write in an email, please make sure you identify the problem, identify the key stakeholders, and identify course of action. And that's it, right? Don't write a long paragraph. Write 2 or 3 bullets, identify the problem, but most importantly, what's the course of action? So to make sure that your business communication email are you know, are up to par. Maybe you're asking me, well, where do I learn that? You know, there's a lot of great courses that you can see online. Just business communication is a key thing. I was lucky going to American college, university. I was in Colorado, and I had an amazing teacher. I actually had a class, business communication. This was in '96. And she told us that the emails are going to be predominant ways of communicating. So you can just see that Americans have put an incredible emphasis, you know, on the business communication, and now, and still is, through email. And then build trust. This is key for Americans. Americans love this word. And it's not easy to build trust, but it always starts with being honest. You have to be honest. And maybe one of the biggest gaps that I see between the cultures is between owning mistakes and not owning mistakes, right? Americans really appreciate when you say, hey, I messed up. I own it. This is on me. But this is what I learned, and it's not going to happen again. Unfortunately, in Serbia, I've seen a lot of times, you know, people like to blame each other. Like, it's never my fault, you know, it's this person's fault, that person's fault. You know, something that I noticed, you know, obviously I don't have some empirical data, but, you know, I would like to see that more from the Serbian companies, especially when you're working with your client. If you mess something up, it's not a problem. You know, be honest, be forefront, own the mistake, but then, you know, make sure it's not repeated. And that's how you're going to earn the trust. Nobody's perfect. Your client is going to expect that you're not perfect. Obviously, they don't want you to make a lot of mistakes, but if you do, please own up to that mistake. I'm using a little bit of, you know, street language here, but I just wanted to get your attention. Get stuff done. Get it done. You know, Americans are not interested in excuses, blame game, whose fault it is. They're interested in the bottom line. Can you get this thing done or not, right? So make sure, you know, that you're honest, that you are owning to mistakes, but then at the end of the day, get the stuff done. So that's how you build recurring revenue, right? You want that same client to keep coming. You want referrals from that client. In order to do that, make sure you over-communicate. Make sure you get stuff done, right? Get it done for them and build that trust. That's how you're going to build that trust. And some of you guys, a lot of you guys, I'm sure you have recurring customers. And if you look at the things that you have done right, I promise you, you did a lot of these things right. You communicated well, you got the stuff done in time, and if there was a mistake or error, you owned up to it. Your clients are going to appreciate that, and they're going to keep coming back to you, which is what you want. And business entertainment, right? Like I said, we're doing this 30-minute presentation. You know, this might as well be a 30-day workshop. We don't have time for that. But, you know, we were talking about pre-project negotiation, how to put yourself in the best position to win that project. Once you have a project, how do you satisfy your clients so that they keep coming back? But now it's time for a little fun, right? There are business gatherings, there's events, and a lot of people actually ask me in the private life, well, how do Americans behave at these entertainment settings? And we want to give you some do's and don'ts, right? So here's some do's, what to do at the business gathering. You want to have fun, right? And that's number one thing. You want to be yourself. I remember my first IT event. You know, it was with McAfee. It was almost like 15 years ago. I was still, you know, kind of young in IT, and we were in Denver. We were going to a concert with this nice luxury bus, and a McAfee partner sat next to me, and you know, it was like Thursday. It was at 7 o'clock in the evening, and we were riding for maybe 30 minutes. It was a big traffic, 30 minutes, 40 minutes or so. And I remember talking to this partner nonstop about business till my manager, you know, when we got to the concert venue, they said, hey, it's nice that you're passionate about business, but maybe, you know, you should not talk about work all the time. These people are here to have fun too. So you want to kind of find that balance. Yeah, you can mention work, but most of the time, you know, when there's a business gathering, an event, you know, Americans like to have fun. This is your chance to implore your IQ, intelligence, but also emotional intelligence, right? You do want to be politically correct. Here's me at one of the events. You know, this is my friend Kim Schneider and Brittany Phillips. You know, yeah, they know I'm in cybersecurity, but, you know, I like to connect with people, you know, outside the IT world. You know, people like to travel. If you're confused, you know, hey, how do I'm here at the gathering, you know, there's a lot of American business people. What should I do? Well, ask open-ended questions. You know, you can always ask them like, hey, what brings you here? You know, you can ask people about that passion. You can ask them. People are very open to share that information. Americans are generally open. They love to share, especially, you know, some things they're proud of. And then active listening. I am actually guilty of that myself. You know, sometimes, you know, my family probably, if they're listening, they're laughing. But, you know, don't just wait for your turn to talk, right? And don't interrupt. You want to do active listening. Really pay attention to what the other person is saying. And remember names, right? A big one is also when you gather those business cards, follow up. You know, we'll talk about that in a minute. But make sure, yeah, you know, you meet a lot of people, but it's all about like, hey, can you follow up with them and can you connect with them in a professional manner after the event? What not to do? Yeah, some of you guys are probably smiling. You know, this is a little wild photo of me, you know, again, hanging out with my friend Shannon there. But don't be grumpy. Don't show up at the business gathering grumpy, right? Don't just talk about work. We talked about that. Don't be disrespectful. People don't like gossip, right? So don't do that. Politics is a big thing right now in the United States. You know, country is very, very passionate, and you know, some say divided around certain topics. It's never a good time to bring politics, especially nowadays. So, you know, you want to strike a balance between fun, showing who you are, but also be professional. Maybe, you know, if you want to do that wild thing that you want to do, something you know, outrageous, maybe you should not. You know, so. This is me actually when I already built a relationship. This is my partner. This is my 40th birthday. You know, this is 7 years into a business relationship. So this was taken in Florida on the boat. So we had a little bit of fun. But my point is try to find that balance of being yourself, having fun, but also do it in a professional business manner. And then make most of every business event, right? You know, one of the things that Americans do really well, and I actually always like to challenge people, is you make a plan when you're going to an event. I always make a plan. There are 2 or 3 people I want to meet. Make sure that that's done. You know, the best way to actually, you know, create value at the event, ask other people, do you want me to introduce you to somebody? Before you know it, that person is going to introduce you to somebody. And, you know, it's really living up to that notion, mixing business and pleasure, right? That's what you want to do. But, you know, one thing, and I'm guilty of the same thing, when we have a great time at the event, we meet great people, but life happens, right? We grab that business card, but we never follow up, right? A big thing if you want to have a successful event is you want to follow up after the event. Grab those business cards. A lot of times at the events now, Americans are just going to take out the phone and say, hey, you know, let me find you on LinkedIn. I see business cards being less prevalent. They still have them, but people just connect like, hey, let me just find you on LinkedIn right away. Follow up with people. Remember a couple of, fun things about them. Hey, Lukashin, I know you, or Mike, I know you like the, rock climbing. There is a great rock climbing event. I don't know if you want to go to, but by the way, would also like to tell you about, our product or our services. So mix business and pleasure, and follow up. We are going to have a lot of, I'm sure, a lot of questions which we are going to table and bring them into our fireside chat, which is the second part of this engagement today. You guys can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's another thing. I understand that LinkedIn is coming slowly into Europe, into Serbia, but Americans are living on LinkedIn. It's a very popular social media platform. If you don't have one, or if you're not active, please do. You can find me there at Aleks Paunic. And then you can shoot me an email if you have some questions about security, compliance, expanding in US, presenting in US, you can send me an email at alex.paunic@precogsecurity.com. Having said that, we do appreciate your time. And again, send us all the questions and we will table those and answer those in fireside chat.
So hey everyone, thanks so much for hanging around and staying after this amazing presentation by Aleks Paunic. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us. It's been a real pleasure, even for me, who I think have spent quite a bit of time with you and asked you directly for many of those tips. It was really, really useful to hear them again and sort of make sure that you're in line with this bicultural thing in a way that we folks and entrepreneurs from Serbia are trying to do. So thank you so much for that. I've been really lucky to have met you initially through the Serbian Entrepreneurs Group from the US, and to have met you in Miami. We also had we're lucky to hang around on a couple more occasions, and it's really great to have an opportunity to chat with you in this particular format and on this particular topic with both live audience and all the guys and gals who'll be watching this video in the months and years after. So there's one thing that I wanted to start off, and this is an insight into, I'm going to say, let's say a strand of the American cultural DNA, which I haven't heard from anybody else. And this is like the first thing I remember you saying when we met, is something along the lines of, the Americans, they just want to get entertained. And, it's sort of silly out of context, but it really stuck with me. And we chatted a bit about that previously, but I think that folks could get value from hearing this idea. So if you would mind, what do you mean by that when you say that?
Yeah, I mean, thanks again, everybody, for staying with us. And I think that's a great question to kick off this fireside chat, Vukašine. And, 30 years I've been comparing the cultures. It's a blessing and a curse, one half, obviously I was born here, I'm Serbian, but then, I got dual citizenship, and I can see this world, through both eyes, Serbian and American. But I did notice living there that, all right, people in the United States, the reason, I don't want to get too philosophical, but the reason for living is, people want to be happy, people want to be entertained, right? And we do see that before I even came to the United States. We see it through the popular culture, movies, and videos, and those kind of things. I remember in the 80s, I used to when I lived in Serbia, I used to get up at 6:50 a.m. to watch MTV videos and those kind of things. But I noticed that's people don't live just for entertainment. They want to get stuff done. But if you can get stuff done and be entertained, that's much better than getting stuff done, right? And that's one thing that's probably very different than in Serbia. We grew up here. Obviously, there's tough history. These parts, we experienced very tough histories, all the wars and the sanctions and everything that came up to that. And just the notion for a lot of people was, people were trying to survive, and we were all in that boat. And it's a little bit inside of our DNA. Well, in American DNA, they didn't experience those kind of, wars and tragedies. So it's a little bit easier for them when you look at from their history in the roaring 20s and 20s. They're like, this life, maybe we should get entertained and have some fun, have some value out of it. And, people listening like, okay, yeah, I know they like to get today. What does that have to do with me, with my IT company? Well, to bring it home, when you're presenting, right, you probably want to start with a little joke, a little something like lighter. Yes, you're going to get into your, code and what kind of problem you solve. And you got this, kick-ass SaaS product. You're going to change the world, disrupt. But before that, you want to show a little bit of personality, that they say it. And people like to sometimes make a decision who they work with. Like if they have two companies, if an American is, at the precipice, two companies, right, similar product, and the number one is they want to get things done. Yeah. But one company is, yes, providing a product and the service that they need. The other one is doing the same, but the other one is also fun to be around, right? And, there's that added value. They're going to make a decision. You know what? Life is short, this is going to be a top project, but I want to have fun while I'm doing it, if I can. So there's that little bit of entertainment aspect. And, when you just look at, you were there, we were in Miami together, how cities are structured, how, infrastructure works, how urban design works, a lot of things are catering to that entertainment gene, if you will, like, I want to have fun while I'm alive. So there's that. And, we obviously catching up here, people are, standards are better and people want to also have fun. Hey, I'm doing okay. I also want to have fun. But I think it's very deeply rooted in American kind of way of everyday life, being entertained.
Yeah, and that is awesome. And, obviously this is something that you should take good care if you see someone and read their body language, if they're not there to be entertained, you may skip over that. If you're not necessarily a person who has an amazing sense of humor, don't necessarily risk it with a joke, and don't try to entertain if you have German clients. I'm just kidding. Probably also depends on case.
But I'll give you one more example. Like I'm sure that some of the people notice, like, look at Mark Zuckerberg, right? I mean, this is probably not your poster boy for jokes and somebody who is fun.
Yeah.
But look what he's doing with his image, right? I mean, lately, just in the last few months, we saw him on the surfboard. Yeah. I mean, sure, it's coming off as funny, but we know what he's doing. He's trying to relate to people. He's trying to show fun. And with Metaverse now, with Facebook, he's trying to do all these fun activities. Again, you know, everybody, you know, no matter how much of the engineering task you have ahead, complex task, you know, it doesn't hurt to find that little bit lighter note too.
He did an amazing job with that. I mean, he showed a lot of humility, some self-effacing jokes. I mean, with the cream.
Right.
Obviously, somebody's doing their job well over there, and I'm happy for them. I mean, they've taken a lot of beating.
Right.
You know, some of it probably, you know, deserved. Some of it maybe not. But in any case, that brings me to an interesting point. So on the one hand, so actually, tell me this. I have gotten an impression that in the US, humility and being humble in a business setting is something that is generally well viewed as a good thing. You know, at the same time, I've heard multiple times, and I think I've even seen multiple times, that being extremely assertive, almost to the border of aggressiveness, is very much valued indeed. So is there any experience that you can share with us? What's the exact balance between humility and assertiveness? You know, many of my mentors from the US, yourself included,
Thank you.
have been very, very, very helpful to me in telling me, okay, get your shoulders straightened, go out on that stage and shout your pitch and make your first sentence the best one yet, be confident, and so on. How should we interpret this, you know, seeming duality of being humble yet assertive? I've spoken for a long time, but hopefully I managed to get the message across.
I think it's a great message and great question. And I think the answer is, well, it's a lifelong battle trying to find that balance, right?
Okay.
There's no simple answer. Humble and humility, it's a very interesting word. When it's presented itself in the books or movies, the way it's translated in Serbian is skroman, right? But then I asked, well, how do you translate modest? Skroman too. Which brings you to the point, we don't have humble and humility. We don't have exactly that word. And it's a very valuable word in US or American English, if you will. And again, going back to, you know, just American history and culture, you look at Rockefellers and Carnegie Halls, they looked at this life as a game a little bit, right? They felt like they won, right? And a lot of times, you know, and sure, we can argue, you know, some things, but bottom line is they felt like they won and then they gave back, right? They built libraries, they built halls, and that kind of thing. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is, you got to know when you say assertive, when it's showtime. Yeah. Now you got to execute, but then you got to find your battle when you can be humble, right?
Nice.
When it's time to close business, when it's time to win business, if you feel you're mistreated, if you're standing up for, you know, what you feel is righteous, that's when you want to be assertive. That's when you want to be aggressive. What they say in Serbian, lupite šakom u sto. But then there's also plenty of opportunities to show when you're humble, and you got to show that humility, and it just speaks power to you. I've seen incredibly powerful people, and people that could, you know, have you think have every right to be very aggressive, but they feel like they have nothing to prove, and they're very humble, right? And then you're like, okay. This is a cultural difference, because you see these captains of industry, and you know, they build empires and they build tremendous companies, but then you can see them being incredibly humble when they're doing some volunteering, or where they're mentoring, or where there is you know, highly charged situation where they bring a lot of humility. So there's no easy answer to that, but pick the battles. Yes, Americans absolutely respect when you're direct, when you mean business, shoulder straight up, and when you're presenting, you believe in your product, believe in your company, believe in your team. But then there's going to be, I was talking about mistakes, right? Yep. Be humble. Yep. Let's say that's a chance to be humble and show humility. You own a mistake. You know what? I made a mistake here, Bukashin. Mm-hmm. I'm really sorry about that, and I know this could hurt you, but let me tell you, you know, we learn from it, and it's not going to happen. That's a chance to be humble. You know, you're not giving up your position. You know, there's a difference. You know, I think in the Serbian culture, we kind of view that as a vulnerability, right? When you know, it's, you know, that person is vulnerable, but vulnerability can be, you know, if presented right, mm-hmm. you know, it can be your strength. But you just got to know how to pick your battles, and it comes from experience, understanding different situations. Again, I talk a lot about EQ, emotional mm-hmm. intelligence, right? Understanding your audience, understanding the situation, you know, location, and all that stuff. But long story short, it's a lifelong battle trying to balance the two.
So if I were to just like totally, you know, sort of destroy it with simplifying it, I would perhaps try to say, if you're there fighting to step up, you can be aggressive. If you've won something and you're in a good place, be humble. Those two things kind of reinforce each other, mm-hmm. although it's never that simple. But I just wanted to make sure that the audience gets a yes. heuristic for this
you
balance.
Gotta fight for your place under the sun. You know, the competition is tremendous, right? You're having your company, you're having your startup, you're trying to conquer U.S. market with your service, with your product. You gotta stand out, right? But there's going to be plenty of chances to show them that you're humble too.
Yep.
Right.
I always remember an anecdote that a friend of ours from New York, Filibajevic, he always said, you know, you think you're a hotshot? There's 50 other MFs like you standing around the corner waiting to take your place. You know,
I would add a few more zeros.
Yep.
500 to 5,000. You know. So, yeah.
So it's always
mm-hmm.
a balanced struggle. I want actually really you got me thinking with the example of making a mistake, mm-hmm. and I want to sort of, you know, challenge you on that, mm-hmm. Because I think that in my practice with some subset of American well, let's say stakeholders, mm-hmm. not necessarily clients, but folks, sometimes I think I've seen situations in which, even though I find your approach the only appropriate one, when you come out and you say that you've made a mistake and you try to be very open and mm-hmm. to rectify that is seen as weakness and that is attacked. I've also seen, you know, behavior which indicates that folks tend to obfuscate mistakes and sophisticatedly sort of deflect, you know, any negativity that might come from them or their department. Mm-hmm. And to my sort of, you know, disbelief, it worked for them, you know, miraculously. Is this something that actually happens in practice, or is this like an anomaly which I witnessed? I have to mention just one thing. I think there was a bit of office politics and corporate politics mm-hmm. involved in those cases, which I've seen. Mm-hmm. So briefly, we don't need to get into that, but I'm just curious, what's your thought?
We cannot say like every company is going to be the same. At the end of the day, we're talking about human beings, right? There's office politics, but I've seen it more often than not, right? That owning up to a mistake in the long run, it's going to pay off. Sure. There's going to be companies, and some people are going to be like, Alex, what are you talking about? We just dealt with this company. You know, they made a mistake. They never wanted to own up to it. That's going to happen. It's not a perfect world, guys. But in the long run, you know, you're building this in the long run. It's going to pay off. maybe that client, you run into a person that's looking for promotion. It's not, great professional, whatnot. I would say it's probably, anomaly. But I remember myself, I had to learn that, and probably a hard way. And I always start with myself. I'm humble enough to say I'm not perfect. Neither is my English, neither is my behavior. But that's one of the things that that I had to learn first way. Do not blame other people. Start from yourself and own up to mistakes. It's going to happen that the companies don't live up to that. But I am, I'm advising people to look in the long run. And you said it right. There's office politics all the time. We talked about organizational charts, right? Who do people report to? I mean, I work for corporations and I manage the corporations. A lot of office politics is going on. You would not even believe. So sometimes they're a victim. So you were probably maybe a victim of that. People didn't want to own up to it. But at the end of the day, you're building your brand in the long run, and that's going to pay off in the long run.
That's the most perfect answer I can see. And I also know that some folks here have been, in situations where the political approach has been forced upon them. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts so that they know that you're not just talking about some dreamland, version.
It's not perfect. It's far from perfect.
Yeah, for the long term, you're building your personal brand, your company brand, being straight and saying how this will not happen again. Probably, with normal people gets things done. So one thing you mentioned that some things that folks from Serbia have a sort of cultural tendency sometimes to do is to be late for meetings, or to not send an email or a project when they said they would, even though those can be small omissions, they get noticed. And this is something that I've witnessed for myself in the US. There was also one thing that I think I've heard from you, and I've heard from other people. The objective that I've heard is grumpy. So being as you are on both, sort of chairs at the same, both cultural chairs at the same time, how do you see grumpiness in Serbia? And how do you see grumpiness in America, both in business settings, obviously?
Right. I was a grumpy Balkan boy, coming to the States first time, and people would just say flat out, like strangers on the street would tell you, like, smile, you're like, it's just people appreciate a smile. And if you're going to a business setup, especially party gathering, I remember myself, sometimes I just go grumpy, just don't go, right? But people expect you to smile, and people will tell you. I mean, I literally had strangers on the street or setting say, "Hey, Vukašin," smile. And that's a culture shock that the stranger would say, but they mean well, right? Yeah. And I don't know if it's I'm kind of measuring walking into a restaurant or a bar here or a coffee shop. A lot of times, I didn't see people greeting you with a smile. It's a very different thing in the United States. It's very competitive. Yeah. Whether you're going to Starbucks or another coffee, like you have a host, somebody's greeting you with a smile. Hey, how are you? How's your day? And I know in Serbians, they're like thinking like, oh, that's so fake. Or, we have that tendency to say, oh, they're Americans, they're fake. But I think it's just part of the culture. And, something that I learned the hard way, and I'm like, you know what? Again, going back to people want to be entertained. People want to be happy. They don't want to be surrounded by grumpy people. Smile more. It's going to help. And, we don't want to get into psychological effects, but, just a little thing, what I notice, or maybe it's a big thing, the Americans just tend to smile more often than we do, than I do personally,
Yeah, they absolutely. And even if all of those thank yous and how are yous might be fake on some level, at the same time, it's so ingrained that it's so well-natured, or at least that was my personal experience after a first 100 times before I got used to it. So I can see how that would be useful. And one,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but I should have like emphasized. I'm glad that you brought up thank yous and pleases and sorries.
Yeah.
It's incredibly important for our audience. If you ever go to a gathering, you're going to be surprised how Americans say that. Sure, we can have a discussion if it's fake or not. You know, I think it's genuine most of the time.
Yeah.
Please use your thank yous and pleases. It's incredible how much they use that. And there's also this little thing I noticed in Serbia when you step in some of the space, you know, really people are going to apologize. You know, we're so competitive for just a little space, you know, whether you're in a coffee shop or a gym or bus, you know. Americans, you probably notice, as soon as you're into somebody's like, oh, they apologize, sorry. Like, it could be a person that's bigger than me.
Yeah.
And they could be like, oh, I'm sorry, pardon me. I'm sorry, I'm in your space. So there's a lot of sorries, thank yous, pleases going on. How are yous? You know, people lock their eyes, you know, and they say hi. And sure, it's a little bit different. They're going to say, like, they're never going to say that in New York. Don't look at the person in the subway in New York. I was just in New York.
Yeah.
But they're going to say, like, southern states, like Texas or something. When you walk next to a stranger and they look in your eyes, they're going to say, hi, how are you? Yeah. You're like, who's this person? Like, it's normal, right? Especially in the southern states. So, yeah, a lot of thank yous, pleases, and sorries. So please, you know, if you engage with Americans at the gathering or if you travel there, expect that.
Going back to a more perhaps concrete business aspect of, let's call it business development in the U.S. At one point in time during my travels and meetings and events on Tesla tours in the U.S., at some point in time I watched a presentation of a startup and it was a really, really great startup. I mean, they had amazing revenue traction. They were very well funded. Their product was used by you know, some incredible companies and brands. And this is none of those pieces of information got through to the audience until the Q&A, when someone, you know, just wanted to understand why they're there, and they started asking them those questions. And at that point in time, it kind of seemed to me that, I don't know, either they're on a tourist trip, so they just came by to pitch, or they really sort of skipped a few steps in their preparation. So I know that you covered this in your talk, but I'm just wondering whether you had any additional thoughts that you would like to share in terms of preparation and you know, presenting yourself. Let's say if you're in the US for the first time, because I'm guessing by the second or third time you're probably gonna get, you know, you're gonna get it right. Hopefully, if you're smart and motivated. Let's say for the first time, if you're going there to present your startup, what's your, like, you know, must do list?
Wow.
We can keep it to 3.
Right. So we were talking about this could be easily a 30-day workshop to go over this. So in 3 minutes, you know, I'm going to go back what I said. Unfortunately, you know, I feel that's my strong belief after listening to a lot of presentations and listening to a lot of people, you know, trying to argue or sell or articulate their service, their company, their product from Serbia. The talent that we have, the engineering power, the innovative, you know, ideas and all that, our English is just not matching it. And I'm saying we, you know, and I'm humble enough to say I'm still working on my English, and you know, it's far from perfect. And I should be the one saying, like, 30 years there, you know, but you know, I use it for sales purposes. It helps me tell my story, you know, where are you from, this and that. But going back, just from the high level, I just feel our English is not matching our engineering and innovative power, right? And I've seen those kind of presentations where there's a tremendous product, you know, there's traction, there's an idea, there's a tremendous capability to scale, but coming to US, you know, they're unprepared. Know your audience. That's always the first one, right? Where you're presenting. But, you know, from the high level, strategic level, you probably coming to US, you're going to have to evaluate, you know, what is that vertical you're going after. I mentioned channel, right? You're going to have to, you want to sell in US, you're selling a product, even a service. yeah, you're going to sell something directly, but then you're also going to need partners, strategic partners, system integrators, distributors, and whatnot. And then, you know, US is ever changing. It's hard to capture, you know, what is US. It's 330 million people. You know, we have 50 states. And right now there's a dynamic with COVID. We talked about it today before the fireside chat. A lot of companies are actually, you know, moving now, for, let's say, from California to Texas. Austin, Texas, for example, is becoming a big thing. So my advice is, again, going into US and presenting, and reevaluate some of the value props that you have in Europe or in Serbia, right? My holdup in US, you might have to pivot. And that's what we can advise companies. Keep working on your English, right? But also understand U.S. market better. See if the vertical that you're going after in Serbia or in Europe is going to hold up in U.S. or you have to, you know, make some adjustments. And then see what kind of vehicles you can build to sell your product and the service. Can you go direct? How are you going to market it? Or do you also need a partner? Potentially both, right? Selling directly and the market. So that's, you know, just kind of reevaluate, you know, your U.S. strategy for sure.
So sorry for the impossible question. Okay. I posed it intentionally, though, to see what we can squeeze more from you while we have you here. So what I would sort of extract from that is work on your English, unless it's effing native.
But let's I hate giving an action work on English. What does that mean, right? Let's give an action item to the founders and to the owners. I would make your employees communicate 1 day a week. Pick a day. Everything has to be done in English, all the communication. They're gonna fight back, you know. And I did the same thing, you know. Then with the followers, don't do that. No, push them to do it, because some of you are going to say, you know what, Alex, we're already successful. We raised $4 or $5 million. We have revenue, you know, 10. Well, I can make a case. It's only an upside. If you improve your English, right? If your salespeople your business development managers, your project managers, people that are negotiating your company, if the English is better, and there's always room for improvement, whatever you made is going to be ×2 or ×3, right? Well, we already raised the money. Well, you know, your better English is going to get you to even more investors, right? It's going to get you better evaluation. There's only an upside on English. But what do you do with it? Like, let's give you an action item. Pick 1 day a week, and maybe that's going to become 2 days. Trust me, you're not going to forget Serbian, right? We're all passionate about Serbian. Nobody's going to forget Serbian. We love it, we need it, we cherish it. But when it comes to, you know, IT and business communication, there's only an upside. So that's one. Business communication in English.
I would also add, you know, perhaps getting a tutor is not a bad thing. Getting a tutor.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're slowly running out of time, but I think that we've managed to cover this topic extremely well and leverage your experience, and I'm really super thankful for that. Perhaps one final, you know, sort of piece of wisdom that I have to try and get from you, even though I'm guessing that I'm running over time, but hopefully folks won't take it against me. Yeah. So being direct with Americans, that's a good topic. In many or all situations when I was communicating with folks from the US, unless that person was actually an Israeli, who has come to the US, I always knew and always sensed and later on confirmed that I'm not getting all of the unfiltered feedback. I've tried and in many cases succeeded to get it later on, but can you just let's make it a final note. How direct should you be and can you be when talking to the US folks, both in terms of what you get from them and how direct a person, a Balkan boy or girl, should and could be with folks from the US?
I think it's a great last question, because we want to say, like, what can Americans learn from us a little bit, right? So there's definitely things that Americans can learn from, you know, Serbians too. You know, myself, like I said, you know, being a Serbian American, but we are direct, and that's a good thing. But you have to almost like want to earn your chance to be direct, right? So you want to be polished enough, right, before that and be direct. That they value that. A lot of times Americans tell me, hey, we wish we would be, as Americans, we should be more direct. But you're right. You remember how I said that thing about English? Like Americans typically in a one-on-one conversation, you know, they don't like conflict, right? And they're going to try to avoid it. So a hard no, and you probably heard it, like saying, you're telling me like, so would you like to, we would love to sell you our service. And I can say hard no could be, I see what you're saying, but, you know, let me think. That's a hard no.
Let me circle back.
Yeah, let me circle. That's a hard no. Like, Vukašin, we're never going to use your service, right? You're really going to hear that. But in Serbian, they're going to tell you that, which is great. Americans appreciate that, but you want to be polished before you even arrive to that, you know, thing. So basically, again, it's coming down to the balance, coming down to the finesse. You have to judge the situation, right? How close you're with that partner, how close you're with that client. Are you just starting your journey, their relationship, right? So probably, you know, being super direct at the beginning of the relationship, you know, you judge a person, right? If you feel like they're going to appreciate, you know, being super direct, even if it hurts, they might say, you know what? You're the first person that was super honest with me and direct, and I appreciate that, right? Sometimes, you know, maybe you didn't build there's a great word called rapport, right? Rapport means like you build a relationship, right? You earn a little bit of a trust or a lot of trust. You know, you can, if you build a rapport, you can be direct and, you know, give him a hard no. But if you feel rapport is not there, right? Maybe, you know, obfuscating, maybe it's a hard word, but give him what I call a soft no, right? Well, let me circle, let me think about that. Every rule is going to be, every situation is going to be different. Every person is different, but I would say, you know, great rapport and knowing the personalities, you know, maybe you can go with being more direct. But if you don't have the rapport, maybe you should dial back a little bit.
And that was a fantastic note to close on. And I would just like to add on to that. Sometimes folks perhaps see that as insincere or, you know, shallow. However, you know, it's a cultural trait. You know, it doesn't have a moral weight on its own. We also probably have some, you know, cultural traits that would be interpreted otherwise in their cultures. So if you're going to another culture, do get yourself in that mindset. And with that, thank you again so much for taking so much of your time, and especially sharing your contact details and asking for people to contact you directly. Thanks to everyone who joined into this video. And as you've heard, and as you can see, there's a bit of fauna.
And Americans love dogs. You know, we can
there's always an ad.
If you don't know what to ask your American partners, ask them if they have a dog. There's a really good chance that they have a dog. You know, so they're very passionate about that.
Thank you so much for taking time. Thanks, Alex, and see you soon on the next installment of these programs. See ya.
Thank you, everyone.